Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a very special episode of Roads to Liberty. I'm your host, Mike Kniebel. Nathan Prada may be joining us here, mostly in the chats, I think, tonight. We were having a little bit of technical issues. But tonight it is a very special post-election wrap-up. We're going to get into some basically down and dirty here as far as, what happened, where we go from here. And we're going to be hearing it straight from Brandon Phinney and Senator Laura Ebke, as far as, the good, the bad, the ugly, what we as libertarians really need to do. And, we're just going to get right into it here. So first off, both of you came over from one of the old parties. Now, one of the topics that we really wanted to get into is you were facing a lot of opposition in the old party, and you came over here. Why did you come over here? And knowing everything that's happened in the last couple of years, are you happy with that decision? Brandon, we'll go with you first.
Okay. This is always the first question that gets asked of me when I do an interview, so I'm pretty much a pro at this question now. So, pretty much when I came into politics, it was more or less I wanted to get involved in things that were happening within my state, things I wasn't happy with. But unfortunately, LP&H did not have ballot access at the time, so I had to run as one of the two parties to get some experience within the political realm. So I originally had wanted to be an independent, but I think the signature requirement was too burdensome to meet, for my first campaign. So I kind of picked the party I had the most fiscal, policy alignments with at the time. And, my area kind of leans Republican, at least for the Fulterial seat. So I gave it a shot, and I kind of got involved in, the groups here in town pretty early on. And, I kind of gained some support for being a young guy, someone that's still in the military. And, people kind of, gravitate towards that. So it was pretty easy to talk to people and, bring some of the passions that I've, carried over just from the kind of person that I am, I guess. So, but getting elected to my first try was a pretty cool experience. And, I didn't pick the party thinking that, I am a conservative Republican. No, I've always had the small L principles, I guess, until I came into the Libertarian Party and, kind of learned even more about what that philosophy means, and trying to bring that to the masses as a legislator. And me switching parties, it was pretty easy kind of once I figured out that, the GOP in this state really has no interest in, controlling spending, or they want people to be free with their personal choices. It's all about power and control, no matter what party is involved. Not to say that the LPNH would be like that, but we know kind of how the duopoly works. And so it was pretty easy, once I saw how they wanted to govern going forward, that wasn't something I wanted to be a part of. And honestly, after the budget vote from the first year, it was pretty obvious that the small minority of people in the party that actually adhere to true conservative, values or small L values, were getting pushed out of the party anyway, or they weren't given a platform to have support by anybody. So I was like, I don't want to be in a party that is not. I'm interested in trying to work with me or anything that I value. So it was a pretty easy switch, but I waited until the end of the session year to kind of not take away anything from the work that was being done at the time. I didn't want that to really be about me, but I wanted to make a statement about it. So I did give a speech in front of the State House steps, which is kind of how people know me now. So
yeah, and we'll definitely get this question out of the way, because I know that both of you have talked about it a lot, but just kind of giving a little bit of a background. So Laura, if you want to give your elevator speech, I think by now you probably have it perfected, but
yeah, I've given it a lot of time. Thanks. Well, I'm older than Brandon. I'm older than everybody, it seems like. And I grew up in a Republican Party that was very libertarian leaning. The Goldwater to Reagan time frame, go back even as far as Robert Taft, although he was dead before I came along. But there's a very libertarian element within the Republican Party that I grew up in, and I always thought that I was comfortable in the Republican Party as long as that part of the party was there. In the last, got involved in the Ron Paul campaign in 2008. And I saw the way that Republicans were treated, or, the libertarian type Republicans were treated. And I decided, well, you were there, Mike, at the 2016 Libertarian Party convention. You guys invited me to the convention to speak, even though I was still a registered Republican. And Ben Backus comes up to me and he says, "Senator, if you ever decide to switch, we'd be happy to have you." And I wasn't really thinking about it at the time, although my other phone's ringing. Sorry. This always happens. I don't know who I just hung up on, but it doesn't really matter. So anyhow, the other, I hadn't really thought about leaving, although the governor stood up at the state party convention in 2016 and, called a bunch of us out for a few votes. And that sort of sealed the deal for me. I mean, I was kind of on the edge, and he sort of pushed me off the cliff with that. Shortly thereafter, I switched my party registration. I guess at the end of May, while you guys were all down in Orlando, I switched my party registration and let people know. And Dave Demarest got up and didn't announce my name, but he announced that Nebraska had the newest libertarian legislator, and it didn't take too long after that for the word to get out. Am I happy? When I switched, I knew that there was a chance that I was going to get targeted even worse in my reelection bid. I had 2 years yet before I would run for reelection, so I thought I had an opportunity to at least prove who I still was, and I guess I did. But party, people like to play on their team, and that was sort of the great the great demotivator, if you will, this time around for people to vote for me.
Well, sure, and I think what ended up happening, and I'm not only here in Nebraska, but I think across the country, is a lot of us went from being libertarians where no one paid attention to all of a sudden there were these races where libertarians were being targeted, and we just, I'll be honest, and I apologize on this, we just weren't ready for that kind of battle. You're talking about with the teams now. One thing I gotta ask is, how do we honestly break through this team voting? Because it was something that we saw where we thought there were a lot of races that we would have had an opportunity in, and it didn't go our way because of this fear on both the Democrats and the Republicans. How are we going to break through that? Did we learn anything from this time around?
It's kind of funny that you mentioned the two parties, and I missed your second part of the question. I apologize. Am I happy with my choices? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter what's happened in the party since then with internal strife or whatever, but I can't go back to a two-party system that it doesn't actually stand for anything, like other than the power and control that I mentioned. They want to control our lives, they want to control our money, and I don't want to live under that kind of control. So I'm happy being in a party that's actually trying to change things for individuals. This cycle for the election, I think this whole thing with Trump, and I don't want to talk about Trump, but it's a reality. Trump is the most polarizing president I think I've ever experienced in my 30 years of life, and people are voting out of fear. They're voting against another party. They're voting against the ideals of someone else. They're not voting for what they want. And so being a legislator and then being an incumbent and trying to say, look, here's what I've been doing the last few years. Here's what I stand for. Here's what I've been trying to work on, and it just falls on deaf ears. It's frustrating, and it can be really demoralizing, especially with by how much we lost,
Mhm.
with how much money and manpower has gone into reaching people. So it can be really, I'm trying to process some of the emotion from it. I've never done this before, so this is all kind of new to me. But it's trying to just kind of pick back up and keep going. That's really what we have to do here. So
Sure.
Yeah, Mike, what I would say is that the old parties created themselves 150 years ago, and they did it the old-fashioned way. They went out and rounded people up on the streets and created their own political organization, a machine, if you will. We don't have the advantage of that. I mean, people they don't have those kinds of machines anymore in the Republicans and the Democrats necessarily, except in some places. But they have the advantage of habit. And you have multiple generations of people who are used to registering and voting as Republicans and Democrats. And so I think one of the challenges for libertarians is to read books like Robert Heinlein's Take Back Your Government, and read how they built a machine. They build machines, and it's time for us to go out and build a machine, in our neighborhoods and in our precincts, and to look at the way old parties used to do it. It's not going to happen on the internet. The internet is a tool, but it is just one tool. And nothing takes the place of talking to your neighbors and inviting them to church and saying, "Hey, why don't you come on?" If maybe not Brandon, but the church part. Whether it's inviting them to church or a civic civic club, or over to your house for a block party or whatever, nothing takes the place of doing things like that, and then kind of easing into political discussions. And there's a lot of people out there who are registered as nonpartisans or independents or aren't partisans. Those should be, in my view, amongst our first candidates. Go get a voter registration list and go out and start talking to those folks at their door now, not waiting until it's a campaign season again, but do it now when there's no pressure, and just say, "Hey, I've got a group of people coming over to my house next week. We're going to sit around and talk about politics, or whatever." And see if we can start building our own little machines in our neighborhoods and start changing the habits for people.
Well, sure. And Dr. Varner here has a good question. He's asking, how do we build a machine when our political philosophy precludes us from offering rent and political favors to, the cronies that are already in office?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that you do is you don't offer things. What you do is you go out and you build the machine based on the citizens, and you go out and you make the case for for libertarianism, because most people, if you really talk to them, especially unless you're progressive, most people really want less government. Most people want to be left alone. And if we can put it in terms that they can understand that, hey, both old parties are bigger government parties. It just depends on what they want bigger government for. And so we need to learn how to promote the cause of liberty, but we need to do it at the door. We need to do it with individual people, and we need to quit fighting with each other, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, me being a state representative, and you being a senator, I mean, we're kind of similar in the way that we kind of approach things, but we're obviously in two different tiers of our position. So it's trying to still bring down the overarching idea of what our offices represent and making it about the people. And I think that's kind of what the two parties failed to do. They failed to make everything about, what can we do to help you and serve you, and they wanted to be more about, I want to get an office to control some aspect of the state and how it either treats you or treats your property. Actually, it's kind of funny. I had somebody call me today, a guy that owns I forgot. I think it was a bar. But I still get calls on bills that I've done and the issues that I fought in the state, and being like, what can we do about this issue? And it's like, that's still inspiring to me to continue doing what I'm doing, because people care about the issues that I've done and cared about, and been passionate about. So like, at some point down the road, people are going to see the work that we've done and say, hey, like, I want to be involved in that because that guy gets it. And I think a lot of people that get into office on the two parties, they kind of just put their name on a ballot. They get carried in by their party. They don't do any of the work to promote actual ideas of change. They want to just keep perpetuating it. And I'm not someone that wants to perpetuate that crap. I want to bring about the change that I want to see in the world, as cliche as that is. So that's why I have put so much of myself into this job, and to me, I took it pretty seriously, even though I didn't really get paid for it. But it wasn't about the pay. It was about, what am I doing to affect the lives of the people I live around. So that's kind of why, like, it doesn't matter what party I'm in or really any of that. It's about, what are we doing to affect change. So
Sure.
I've tried to make everything about policy. Everything that we do, like as an elected person, is about changing policy in the state. And some people have, I guess, like, out of they don't really have achievable goals when it comes to that. We see people get elected to Congress that really have no platform. They're kind of just going along with what their party says, but for some reason, people keep voting for that. And we have to break through the barrier of, they're just voting for the party, they're not voting for the person. We're trying to make it more or less about, we're the real deal, and like, you should vote for us based on our merit and and our character. People are really just not taking to that yet. And I really don't have an answer to how we change that, because as long as we're still staying involved in our communities, people will know who we are at some point. But it's getting them to vote outside of that two-party system and check off the L on their ballot. It's really hard to change their minds, and I don't have an answer for that.
So, got a couple of follow-up questions here. Now, one, Brandon, when you're talking about focusing on policy, and I think that Rick, you did a very good
Oh, did I lose you?
job of that.
Oh, we got a
On the
problem.
Oh no, I think we lost you.
But
Oh no.
It's just us, Brandon. We can
Oh no.
we can pirate the thing here.
Yeah.
oh,
We lost you, Mike.
you lost. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Now we
try
can.
again?
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize on that. Sometimes this happens with Bellevue Internet. So we're all.
Nope. Oh man. I guess we can kind of read the questions and come up with our own answers, Laura. Here.
We could.
All right. I apologize here. I'm not sure what seems to be happening, why I'm being dropped out. I may just end up texting them a question, but I wanted to ask about, were you targeted at all, Brandon, specifically by any of the other parties?
Oh, actually, that part actually surprised me. I really wasn't. I kind of think they didn't take me seriously, even as the incumbent. I never saw any hate mail. I never saw anything against me through the mail at all, which is really kind of surprising. I'm the only big L in Rochester, as far as I know. I mean, as far as having been a candidate here. So I don't think they even, even thought of me. I think once they saw that I switched parties, they completely, they completely forgot about me and didn't think I was a threat to them. Which I guess it did prove correct. And I wanted to prove people wrong so badly, and that's a part of being bitter. I'm trying to to kind of get over, but no, I really wasn't targeted by anybody around here. People don't pay attention to who the reps are in this state. I mean, there's 400 of us in the House here, so it's really hard to get to know everybody. And there's such a small-ish population that eventually you're gonna run into somebody that's been in the legislature. So, and not even know who they were. So it's really just you have to keep reminding people who you are and what you've been doing or what you want to do. Um, so it's one of those where I had my 2 years and my first term under my belt, and then they probably want me to fade off into obscurity, but I'm not going anywhere. So I'm gonna keep putting my name out there, and maybe then I'll get my hate mail. It'll make me happy.
You didn't miss much, Brandon. It's not a lot of fun being on the receiving end of some of that stuff.
Well, I think like I said, we were kind of here in the party caught off guard by that, and that's something that we were behind the curve on in learning, and so we now know what can happen, but it's unfortunately it's too late for us on this time. But Nathan wanted to ask, are there some positive takeaways that we can have from both of these campaigns?
Well, I'll start. First of all, I think that what you just said, Mike, is that the party had, at least in Nebraska and probably elsewhere, has learned some valuable lessons. I think that I don't think anybody believed me when I told you how terrible it was going to be. So I think that the party has learned and has grown a little bit as a result of that. So that's a good thing. One of the things that we've learned also, I think, is that the party has to not only be prepared for the bad stuff, but has to be prepared to counterattack if necessary. And so, I mean, that's a good thing. I think, we have a lot of people who have gained some more experience. Hopefully in the next couple of years here in Nebraska, we'll have some, people winning some city council races and some other local races. I mean, right now we've got Ben, and that's it, right? In the state, but hopefully we'll have some more, win some city council races or some county commissioner races or something else, and build from the bottom up. I mean, that's where it's all about, and we can do that by building our machine. By going out and meeting people in the precincts. Today, not waiting until we get, you can't wait until the last minute, especially when you're behind to begin with.
Sure. Well, and actually we have one more in the state with Matt Malley, who did something that he was interested in what was going on in his local boards. And he noticed that in Bruno, that there was not a candidate on the ballot. And so he went there and he filed, and he was the only one. So
those are the best kinds of elections.
And I think that's one thing. That's also one thing that's on our radar now. Are offices like that are either unopposed or have no candidates. But Jared's also got a really good one here about why is it so difficult to recruit good candidates for our lowest offices?
If I can answer the first question, so the positive takeaway that I've gotten. This having been my first time getting elected and then going through another, cycle, I learned how to campaign and how much hard work goes into it. And I've learned a lot from that process, and it's been really rewarding, I think, for the future, because now I have, some knowledge of what to expect in the future, and I can be a little bit more prepared. I did have a lot of support from all over the country too, and that really helped to get everything I needed to get out. I had some great people take the time to to get involved and do some of the ground game with me and for me, and I really can't say anything bad about the work that was done. I think the outcome isn't what we wanted, and it was a lot. I think the numbers was what we didn't really expect, but I think that going forward, I can say that a lot had been accomplished. Having that many people in my city vote, for the L ticket, especially for my office, is like really, I mean, I think I was told I'm the only L in the state that's gotten over 10% in a three-way race, like in the whole state. I guess that's a great takeaway because now we're going to build on something in this city where people are going to be more open to our ideas and our candidates in the future. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping to influence. I know that I'm not going to be the one that's going to run for this office every time, but I think that as long as someone's constantly getting out there and trying to promote these ideals, like it's going to influence people in the future. So I mean, that's one great thing to be positive about.
Jared asked a really good question about why it's so difficult to recruit good candidates for the lowest offices. And I'll tell you kind of my working theory on that. It's not very sexy. When you start talking about village boards or school boards or local weed control or whatever, we have that in Nebraska, or whatever, it's not something that lends itself well to a libertarian philosophy naturally. I mean, it doesn't if you look at the national platform, there's nothing in there that I mean, it doesn't just lend itself well to this sort of exciting libertarian edginess. Most of our local offices are really about good government, specific tasks. School boards. You're not going to get elected to school board by saying let's get rid of public schools. Rather, what your goal is to make public schools as a school board member as efficient as possible and as strong as possible. So I think that's one of the things. I mean, it's pretty flashy to run for governor or U.S. senator or whatever, and it lends itself very well to some of those big ticket items that we see in the platform. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you can win anything. And so I'm all for trying to find as many of these smaller offices, if you will, to run libertarians as, and maybe they're nonpartisan races, and that's an even better thing, because if you're running for if people don't even know how you're registered, and you might be able to get in on some of these smaller races in these villages without too much of a fight.
I've been saying the last 2 years that you have to start small. You have to get into city councils. You have to get into school boards and planning boards and zoning boards and blah, blah, blah. Like, you have to start somewhere. And I think people are trying to do the go big or go home thing. And it's like, well, sure, like you're going to, get to a lot of people, but as far as trying to win something, you're not going to win that way. People have to see that someone in our party can win something. And, right now, Jeff Hewitt is about to win his campaign for mayor, and that's a huge win for the party. I think he's going to pull it off. I've been following some of the news on that. I think he's going to pull it off, and that's a huge win for the party. I actually saw a small, name, some names of people that had gotten elected on election day. And some of them were mayors, and a lot of them were city council, and that's where we're going to have the most influence in our communities. The whole Senate and Congress thing, like, it's great to put some visibility for the party and to put a face on it, but we're not going to win those campaigns until we win somewhere small where we can build on a coalition, get more people involved, and see the real impact of what our ideals can do. And I think that people, again, they see the over-encompassing thing, where for Senate and Congress, like you're more talking about the federal government, and we all know that our ideas at the moment where things are so politically divided and polarizing that we're not going to get anywhere in Senate or Congress. We have to start off in the state and like in our cities and get the city council stuff. So people can see, look, like someone in Libertarian Party, they did help with the schools. They are involved in their community issues, like trying to fix the homeless crisis like we have here, or trying to do something to help people in recovery centers. So it's like if people can see things happening, um, on the local area first, then they'd be more open to voting for them in the future. So trying to keep my train of thought here, but that's a lot of questions coming in. So but ideally, so like I plan to run for city council. I've been asking people where they think I'd be the most effective, and what they think that that I can do the most help with, and I think that's what I'm going to go back to. Is I'm going to stick to my own word and try to keep things small.
Well, thank you for that, Brandon. That was actually going to be one of the final questions I had, was what was going to be your plan going forward. And so city council, that's great to hear. I mean, just we're definitely going to be looking forward to watching that. Jared's got another question, but Senator, I want to ask you, going forward, what do you think your plans are going to be?
I will still be involved in policy in another format. I signed a contract today, and I don't know that they want me to make it public, but I'm going to be working with a local think tank that's going to be promoting policy and occupational licensing reform. And then I will also be continuing to travel around the country. I've got 5 LP state conventions that I've been invited to come and speak to in March, April, and May. So I'm gonna that was part of the deal with this contract that I signed, that I'd still be able to get out and work within the party, and we'll see what happens beyond that. My electoral career may be over, but I still plan to stay very involved in the party and in public policy.
I've kind of come to to grips with the idea that I'm better off being a candidate for office than even really building the party from within. I guess I'm trying to say it where I don't come off as an ass. I'm very involved in local parties and the affiliates in New Hampshire for sure, but I think that I'm better used as a candidate because I've already been so public the last 2 years, and I'm trying to continue to build on that. And you, Senator, you're way above me in the stratosphere, as far as what you've actually accomplished. And so I'm trying not to take some influence from you, and especially the bills that you've gotten signed into law. That's that to me is something to look to look up to and to use in my own area as well. So I think that we all need to continue to learn from each other and see what we can do to make the most impact on policy.
I think it's for sure true that everybody has kind of their own set of skills and gifts, if you will, and some people are better candidates. I was a pretty good legislator. I don't know that I was a very good candidate, honestly. I don't like a lot of that kind of glad handing stuff and things like that. I'm not very good at I do it, but I don't necessarily it's one of those things that you do it because you have to, not because you just really soak it up. And so, I think that I've got pretty good organizational skills, and so I'm kind of looking forward to, being able to help train and work with the party and try to actually grow it. I've got something of a vision for where I think that the party could go, and we'll see if other people agree with me. Jared, you want us to answer this question from Jared? He says, having switched parties, what do you see as our biggest obstacles, and what solutions do you have to address those?
Oh boy.
Sorry, Mike, we took over.
Oh, you're fine.
Well, I'll start. I think our biggest obstacle is ourselves as libertarians.
Amen, sister. Amen. Let me just say that real quick.
I think that we have a tendency, we forget that we are a small party, a couple percentage of in terms of people who identify as libertarians, and we run around, like we're the big dogs, and yelling at each other, and that sort of stuff, and that's kind of silly. I mean, I always tell people that what we really ought to be doing is, we ought to. We ought to say, okay, anybody who wants to move in the direction of more liberty can be one of us. And when we've actually won some races, then we can start fighting with each other. But until then, let's all pull in the same direction. So we need to change kind of the vision of the party if the party wants to be a party. The other piece of it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. You've got these habits, political habits of people voting, red or blue or, R or D. And somehow we have to change the habits. And the best solution to that, I think, is to go out and actively engage. And, starting tomorrow, Mike, here in Nebraska, I mean, we need to be we need to be out there and be taken seriously in the policy in policy making, but also in party building. So I don't know, Brandon. I'm sorry.
Well, I don't want to highlight the internal fighting too much because I'm sure a lot of you have already seen a lot of that from me, and I kind of made a post about it in one of the LP groups, just kind of apologizing for how I've been acting because just the stuff that was happening was just like really, bad timing, and I didn't take to the accusations very well. But, party infighting aside, I would say that, for the party itself, we have to kind of, get past the stigma and the stereotypes about what we are. There are some people think that we're just Republicans who smoke weed, and that's such a cliche, and it's totally wrong. But that's what people, they honestly believe that that's what we're about. I'm not personally an anarchist, but I don't like anarchists who get pigeonholed as the wrong thing. And so like trying to get past kind of what those terms actually mean to the general public. And so thanks, Nathan. But it's stuff that I've had to kind of explain to people as well. It's like we all just don't want to do heroin in the streets and kill each other for nothing. It's some people would be into that for sure, but I mean, I think you know what I mean. I think people have kind of a weird view of what we stand for, and it's getting past their perceptions of what we actually are. And so the labels, unfortunately, politically they matter, and so people need to start getting their facts straight, and we have to be better arbiters of that. Trying to effectively change people's minds about what we stand for. And so I think that sometimes we can act a little arrogant about that and think that we're, holier than thou politically. And I think we have to kind of, scale back some of the ego and be like, look, there are a lot of people that don't understand because they've been kind of programmed for, for so long that there's only a two-party system, and both of these platforms, they're not fluid. They have a line, they have a divider, and then there's us. Like we're completely off the chart, and people don't understand us or what we're about. So it's trying to make not only our platform but us as people more palatable. I use the word being pragmatic, not like in a sense to dilute our platform or our philosophy, but be more pragmatic in our approach to actual like human conversations and like how we interact with people in the public, especially when we're campaigning. And when we're campaigning is the best opportunity to get the word out about what we actually stand for. And so far, I don't think that a whole lot of us have been doing that. I haven't been doing it as well either. I mean, I'm certainly at fault for not conveying that properly either. But I mean, I'm only done this once, so I'm taking I'm taking things in as I go. So.
I think you raise a really important point there, Brandon, with respect to the platform, and I've talked to several people about this in the last couple of days. If you look at the National Party platform, it's got some things in there that philosophically we as libertarians may agree with, but which just really don't play well in Dakin, Nebraska, or little itty bitty places, and that what it does is, in some ways, is it leaves us open to criticism because we just can't explain to everybody what these things mean, and so I'm not sure. I'm not trying to throw any bombs here or anything, but I'm not sure that we need to have such a complex or detailed platform. If I had my way, we'd say, we want smaller government. We want lots less government. We want lower taxes. We want free people, and we wouldn't, go into a lot of detail and let each kind of constituency figure out what that means for a while until we get big enough that we've won some things.
Right.
Because it really does. I had one hit piece that came out against me. It referred to me as Libertarian Laura, which I kind of liked, but then it talked about the Libertarian Party platform and some of the crazy things there that just don't fit with rural Nebraska, and so I think most people, if you could sit with them and talk with them for 2 hours and about these things, they would understand it. But right now it's just kind of tough to talking about sex worker rights and things like that is not necessarily something that contributes to the discussion in a village of 300. It makes you look pretty radical. So yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say that I agree with you there, Laura. I think that some of that stuff doesn't play particularly well in Nebraska. I mean, or a variety of other states. It's just like Michael Pickens said here, keep it simple. We're talking about liberty, and let's not get bogged down when we're trying to talk to others. We're coming up on.
I'm so over. I have to put this out here. I am so done with the philosophical grandstanding and the purity test. Like, we need to stop trying to prove ourselves to each other and go prove ourselves to the public. And I'm done trying to play these stupid games with in the party of well, I'm more anarchist than you, or I'm more pure L than you. Like, you shouldn't be in the party anymore, man. Go screw off, man. Because I don't want to work with you if that's how you're gonna act. Like, our whole goal here is to change our political system, is to change policy to make people a lot more free. But instead we're taking the piss at each other every chance that we can get. And to me, it is so irritating. So if we can focus on people and not ourselves, that would be great.
Well, I want to be respectful of both of your times here. We're coming up on 45 minutes, and I very, very much thank both of you for taking some time out of your evening to come on and talk about this, and really just offer up some great information here and some great insight. Couple things. I'd love to have you both on, as we move on into the next year, because we will have some candidates here in Lincoln and looking at 2020 as far as, what we're going to be doing. Before we get into, just a closing statement from both of you, I do want to make a quick push for the website and the podcast. We do have a new shirt out that Nathan is very proud of, and I got to say it, I'm kind of excited about it. So you'll see the post in the comments. Just something that we're trying out here. Just want to give you each a couple of minutes, though, a little bit of a pep talk maybe, or we've learned a lot, but for those of us here that want to run a great local race or get more involved with the Libertarian Party, what do we need to be focusing on so that we can actually win? Talk us up here before we go out. Brandon.
Oh man. I mean, I feel like I've kind of said it a little bit. You know, we need to kind of take our internal strife and kind of, you know, focus back more on the public and what we can do to change our political system and really just focus on policy. What policy in your area is important to the people that you live in your community with? Like, what can you do to change that? They don't care about what book you read from some guy, you know, from 120 years ago. They want to know how you're going to keep their, you know, their you know, costs low. If they can afford a house, how can we change our healthcare system? How can we make, you know, more people free by allowing them to smoke a plant without going to, you know, to prison for it? That's kind of stuff that we really can you know, can affect change through our activism, through being very public about what we stand for, and, you know, getting to know people in their area that vote, and trying to earn their votes, you know, based on your character and your merit. But I think, you know, going forward, the absolute best way for us to move forward as a party, you know, is to recognize that the Boston Red Sox are World Series champions, and you better recognize. Got him. I'm sorry, I had to put some humor in there.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So Laura, in keeping with the sports theme now, I guess, you're kind of like our state party's Scott Frost, and we're wanting to rebuild, and how are we gonna go to victory now?
Well, we got to get back to basics. You're moving your lips, but I can't see what you're saying. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to get back to basics, and it starts tomorrow. And it means that that everybody in the party look at where you're sitting right now, figure out what precinct you're in, and start getting to know people in your precinct. You know, it's easy enough. State party in Nebraska can get hold of the voter rolls, find those independents in your neighborhood, and get to know people in your neighborhood. You know, if you're going to run for office, you know, 2019 is going to be, we've got a couple people in Lincoln that are going to run. You know, 2019 is going to be a big year for city councils and things like that. Yeah. But if you're going to run in 2020, you need to be out there now. You need to start getting to know people. You need to be going to your local city council meetings and school board meetings. Be thinking about where you're going to run, because don't try running without knowing what you're talking about. And then, you know, find out what the issues are. And if it on the local school board level, if the issue is curriculum, don't go out and, you know, tell people that taxation is theft. You know, start talking about what you believe in terms of the curriculum, and, you know, how you think that you know, you can reduce spending on the school board. And so, you know, you got to tailor your message. Doesn't mean that you're not libertarian. It doesn't mean that you know, it just means that you're being a smart politician. And that's something that we aren't always, and we need to be more of if we want to win. And next year we'll win the national championship.
All right. Well, thank you both again for joining us this evening. Thanks for everyone tuning in to Roads to Liberty. We'll be back again maybe later this week with another episode. But Brandon, Laura, thank you so much for everything tonight. And everyone have a great evening.
Peace.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye.
Bye. Having a little bit